Hello, and welcome to part 2 of verbal communication or language, depending on where you are. This is a different day because that's going to bug me. The last one was too long. So anyway, all right, so we went over symbols define, we went over symbols evaluate. Now let's talk about how symbols organize perception, okay? So because we have those symbols, we have a perception over what those symbols mean, what they mean to us, and with that perception can come expectations, okay? With that perception can come expectations. So one example I'm going to give you might not blow your mind. That sounds dramatic, but I love talking about it because it's true, and some of y'all can argue with me, but you're wrong. I hate to say it. So have you ever been like talking to someone, and maybe it's in the time in the relationship where it's time, I don't even know if people use DTR, determine the relationship, but where it's time to decide like, okay, are we going to be exclusive? What are we? That whole fun conversation. And then the person is like, you know what? I don't really do labels. I don't believe in a label. Let's not put a name on it. We're just doing our thing. Let's just do what we're doing. Okay. The reason they claim that they don't believe in labels is because with that label comes expectations. Okay. So what I mean by that is it's very different. And I'm not saying this to assume. Everybody does different stuff with relationships. So I'm not assuming, and I'm also not judging if you're, but what I mean by that is like, it's very different when you're, let's say friends with benefits, or even just hooking up, whatever, than when you're now a boyfriend, when you're now a girlfriend, when you're now a partner. Okay. That comes with different expectations, right? And it even comes in that, even with the transition of now, okay, we're dating, now becoming a husband or a wife, or, again, a life partner. That can be really scary because that comes with different expectations. So it's not a thing that they don't believe in labels, because I bet you if someone slid into your DMs, all of a sudden they might not, but it might be like, I don't know, so, and I don't mean to be doing a guy voice. I know girls can do this too, but and that's fine. If they're not ready for the expectations that come with that label or that symbol, remember we're using symbol, label, and like verbal, label synonymously here. If they're not ready for those expectations, that's okay. They shouldn't be in a relationship. They shouldn't, either step up but don't be a crappy partner. Okay. Symbols allow hypothetical thought. So just due to time, I'm going to skip the last two. They won't be on your final exam, but just so that I can upload this for you. All right. So you do not need to write all of this down, but I include it because I think it is really important. And I think it's something that you should get on your radar, especially those of you who plan on being leaders in some capacity, or maybe you already are. Because these are disconfirming and confirming messages are the kind of things where you don't realize how big of a deal they are until maybe those confirming messages aren't there. Okay. So the thing that I want to clarify is disconfirming messages and confirming messages. It's not about whether you're right or wrong. Okay. It's not about saying like, oh, that's a great idea, or, oh yeah, that's exactly right, when, just to be nice. Okay. It's more about acknowledgement and interaction with that person. Okay. So we're just going to talk through these really quick. Again, you don't need to write this down, but I think it is really important because they definitely factor into how I teach. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but, so let's talk about these. So disconfirmation, ignore the presence or contributions. So it's not even that you're saying, so let's use one example throughout. Okay. Let's just use education, right? That's something you can all relate to. It might be an instructor, and I try not to do this, and I know I'm not perfect at it, but it might be an instructor saying like, okay, which one of you, what does the mitochondria do? Why did I use a science example? I don't know why. I'm so bad at science. I don't even know how to like finish that. Like, what does a mitochondria do? Like, does it do anything? Why would I put myself in that situation? Oh my gosh. Okay. But it might, so if an instructor poses a question and someone participates and says something, whether they raise their hand, whether they just called out, which is fine, right? Y'all know I don't care if you just call out. The instructor might be like, anyone else? Okay. So that can be very disconfirming because you're not even acknowledging the person. Okay. And then confirmation is obviously opposite. So disconfirmation, make no nonverbal contact. So I know that's nonverbal and we're talking about verbal, but again, those messages can be nonverbal. Just not even looking at the person, not even acknowledging them nonverbally as well. And then obviously the opposite, making nonverbal contact. Monologue. So it's more, there's no real interaction. It's just, you're there, it's just not real interaction. All right. More disconfirmation, jumping to interpretation or evaluation rather than working at understanding what the other person means. Confirmation, trying to understand, see where they're coming from, really take what they're saying into consideration. This one's good. And by good, I mean not good, but interesting. Discourage, interrupt, or otherwise make it difficult for the other person to express him, herself, or themselves. Sorry, I copied that straight from the book, but I want to add that pronoun. Or encourage the other person to express his or her thoughts and feelings by showing interest in asking questions. And then avoid responding or responding tangentially by acknowledging the other person's comment, but shifting the focus of the message into another direction. So, y'all, I think the way, like I said at the beginning, I think it can be kind of hard to see like what the big deal is with these because they're so subtle. But I think something that maybe some of you can relate to, and I'm not trying to shame other instructors, but is maybe there are two classes that you feel comfortable in both of them. It's not that you struggle with the content. You feel comfortable in both of them, but one of the classes you participate way more and you don't know why. It's like, you think of the other factors and it might be that instructor uses disconfirming messages that make you feel like your input isn't valuable or whatever. Okay. So I would challenge you to keep this in mind for those of you who want to be teachers or project managers or whatever, because this can be a really big thing that, again, it might seem subtle and small, but it's not. Okay, so now we're going to talk about I versus you statements. Okay. Now, the thing that I want you to keep in mind is this might sound kind of corny and like, oh, yeah, okay, let me just, but there's a reason we talk about this. It is very, very powerful. And it's amazing how just the way that you say things, and I don't mean your tone of voice, I mean the way that you word certain things, the way that we frame certain things with our verbal communication can make an absolutely huge impact. Okay. So I would appreciate you coming into this with an open mind. And some of you may have already heard of this. They're very common. If you haven't, I guarantee you, if you ever, had to or found yourself going to therapy with another person, your therapist would teach you this as you talk in the session. Okay. So let's start with what use statements are. Use statements are accusatory. Okay. You never help out around the house. You always talk bad about my family or, whatever. Okay. And what do we do when we feel like we're being accused? We get defensive. Okay. And we fight back. So what this is framing it in a way to where hopefully, and we don't have control over the other person, but hopefully the conversation doesn't go to a place where it go. Okay. So we use I statements. So if you like kind of a formula, a way to think of I versus you statements, or a way to think of how to frame it is when you blank, fill in the blank, it makes me feel, or I feel blank. Okay. So as it says in the slide, what an I statement does is it allows us to own our own feelings and thoughts. We're not saying, but also I want to note, because some students mistake this, we're not taking the blame. We're not saying like, well, it's frustrating that you don't clean up, but I can just pick up the slack. That's not what this is about. This is not about not, saying that the other person isn't doing something that's frustrating or whatever. It's about us owning our own thoughts and feelings and saying, hey, it makes me feel like this. Okay. These are really, really powerful, and they're really, really hard because it's very easy for us now, if we're at a calm state, to say, like, oh, okay, well, when you do this, but I can tell you because I've experienced this, I still struggle with using you statements. That when you're angry, when you are in a combative mood, it can be very hard not to use a you statement. Okay, so let's practice some, as corny as this might sound. So your roommate is very messy. What can you say instead of you are a pig? When you don't clean up the kitchen, it makes me feel like you don't respect our shared space, right? Your significant other forgot your anniversary. What should you say instead of you're so insensitive? That's my husband in the background. Not to get in the video. Maybe when you forget important dates, it makes me feel like our relationship isn't a priority or something. Okay. Your parents always want to know where you are and what you're doing at every moment of the day. What should you say instead of you're so controlling? When you constantly text me asking for updates, it makes me feel like you don't trust me, right? So this stuff is very important to keep in mind, and it's way easier said than done, okay? So I know that we went over nonverbal communication, and that takes up most of our communication by far. But I do want to emphasize that verbal communication is incredibly, incredibly important as well. Okay. I'm sure we can all remember something that someone said that made us feel really good about ourselves, and a compliment that just meant a lot to us. And I'm sure we can all remember something that someone has said that really hurt us, right? So, and I know there's the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Okay, maybe, but tell that to someone who's been bullied. So our words have impact, and we have to be careful about how we say things and how we word things to other people and how we frame things, because the way that we frame things with our verbal communication can make a huge impact on our relationships, on things that we, our relationships in any form, I should say. It can impact work. It can impact our romantic relationships, our family relationships, our friendships. It can impact every relationship that we have, and it continues to. So we have to be careful what we say and, how we frame it. And that's why I versus you statements are so important and so helpful to note. Okay. All right, y'all. I will be in touch soon. Bye.